What's going on? Today I decided to do a quick review of Essential Fantastic Four, Volume 1. I've been reading this slowly over the past couple weeks, usually just one issue a day. And so I thought I would do a quick review just to get some content going here. Okay, so Fantastic Four Essential. So the Essential line that Marvel used to do here, they print black and white cheap copies of their oldest issues. And this Fantastic Four Volume 1 collects issues number 1 through 20 and Fantastic Four Annual number 1. And so I thought I'd just give a general overview and review of the work. So Fantastic Four number 1 was published in 1961. The four characters who make up the Fantastic Four are Mr. Fantastic, real name Reed Richards, who has the power to stretch himself to incredible lengths. There is Sue Storm, known in her early appearances as the Invisible Girl. It wouldn't be till later that she'd become the Invisible Woman. And also during her first appearances for this entire volume, she only had the power to turn herself invisible. She didn't have the force fields that was granted to her not long after this first volume here. There's the incorrigible but lovable Thing, or Ben Grimm. And there's Sue Storm's younger brother, Johnny Storm, also known as the Human Torch, who can light himself on fire and fly and stuff like that. So, yeah, the first, over the first 100 issues were written by one team of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. So apparently the idea behind the Fantastic Four was that they were looking for a sort of super team to rival the Justice League, and this was before the Avengers. So they came up with the Fantastic Four. So let's talk about the writing a little bit. So obviously this was written in the early 60s, so the writing and formatting of comics back then are not quite the same as they are today, meaning that in modern day comic books, the storytelling is a lot more decompressed, right? There's story arcs that are told over a couple issues. Unlike with the Silver Age comics and the ones to be found in the first 20 issues of Fantastic Four, pretty much all of them are self-contained stories. Furthermore, a lot of comic book writers nowadays often write for trades, aka writing for trade paperbacks, which means, in practical terms, that their story is not meant to be told in single issues as you purchase them. Really, they're writing a trade paperback and then dividing it into 5 or 6 issues, which can make for awkward or imperfect reading experiences. That's not the case with the Silver Age writing, and this has its pros and cons. Obviously, if your entire issue is, the problem's introduced, the heroes fight or solve the problem, and the day is saved within every issue. Obviously, there's not much room for more complex storytelling if you're, like I said, constrained to tell your entire story in one issue. Likewise, for artistic purposes, you obviously don't have every panel, every inch of space matters here if your entire story has to be told over a single issue. So there's not going to be crazy artistic pieces or complex stories. But I think, in my opinion, it has its charms as well. Ideally, I think there's a balance of both that can be had. I think they both have their time and place. Anyway, I'm sorry, we were talking about writing. So back to the writing here. I think it was pretty interesting how these first 20 issues here mentioned a lot of, I guess back then, the sort of political, I guess, landscape or in the United States. Like it's referencing the space race. Jack Kennedy shows up in a panel, the president, before he was obviously assassinated. Khrushchev gets a shout. Yeah, yeah, lots of I don't know. I guess like remonstrances against the evils of communism, which I thought was pretty interesting. Um, I don't necessarily think, I would say, I'm trying not to like, I don't want to say this. I guess it's an interesting political statement. I think it was very safe back then, obviously, for that sort of anti-communist stuff. I kind of wonder if like Fantastic Four, like if they didn't exist in 1960s and if they were coming out today, like that idea, I kind of wonder if I feel like, and by today I mean in like the 2020s, if a comic book about a family would be a political statement, I don't know, in and of itself, or there would necessarily almost be a political element to a sort of family story. It's hard for me to articulate what I'm saying. Sorry, I'm probably just rambling. Let me reset here. Anyway, so much as the political references sort of are dated to the 60s, I guess much too is the is like the language used by like the individual characters within the story. Like I think the Torch is like the Human Torch. He's using a lot of odd jargon that might have sounded hip, that your grandparents might be using. He's like, "Oh, this is really keen. Ain't that so keen?" Stuff like that. It's just silly. But I know a lot of people online have problems with the way that Sue Storm is portrayed within these early issues of the Fantastic Four. And like I said, she didn't have her force field power. She could only turn herself invisible in these early issues. And she doesn't have a lot to do. And the writers actually make reference to that at least twice across this compilation. I think people are, from what I've seen, I think people are a little bit overly sensitive to her portrayal, like her interests and stuff like that. She's shown to have an interest in fashion, for example. And people kind of get up in arms about that. I guess maybe because they think she's one note or shallow in that regard. But I think that sort of criticism is a little bit demeaning because those kind of interests, I think, are legitimate ones. And I don't think there's necessarily wrong with having a character within your story who likes, I don't know, yeah, like Dwar or something. Anyway, but the criticism of the treatment of Sue Storm is not completely overblown. I will say there's probably one or two, I think, real instances where it's like a little just dated, I guess. But the rest of it, I think, is pretty overblown. Okay, to put it another way, I think if I think about it, I think in light of Sue Storm's later character development into the much more independent and strong-willed person that she became in later iterations of her character, I think in retrospect, if you like project the modern version of her onto her initial portrayal, I can understand why it would almost seem offensive, because I guess in many ways she's like a completely different character. And I guess I'm just saying that I think if you take her initial character divorced from the modern projection of it, I don't think there's a lot inherently like sexist, for example. But like once again, I say there's at least two instances which are kind of pushing the line, if not over it. All right, let's move on. In terms of the stories itself, I thought this book was really charming. I love the character interactions and the banter and the I guess the fighting. I think it's pretty charming. But it can be repetitive, and it's not meant to be read straight through. Like I said, I read like one issue a day, and I think that's about right. It's not meant to be like marathoned. Then it would get really repetitive. But I think it's a really fun book. And if you're a fan of the Fantastic Four, I would say 1 through 20 are a must read. You have your first introductions of Mole Man, Doctor Doom, Molecule Man, the Skrulls, the Watcher, Prince Namor's reintroduced from his timely comic days. All right, I think I yapped enough. Okay, so in conclusion, about Fantastic Four, Essentials Volume 1, I would say it is a strong recommend. I don't know if I talked about that. I'm losing it. Okay, well, the Essential line is no longer continued. This black and white version kind of got replaced by Marvel's Epic collections, which has color, which I've seen images of the color, and I quite like the color. I had no problem with black and white, but so it's probably a good thing. So if you can get this cheap, it's probably available like digitally as well. Yeah, read the first 20 issues or so. Just go like through one a day, like what I did. I think you would enjoy it if it's a team and characters that you're interested in. You can see them fight the Hulk. Spider-Man shows up in the annual. It's great. All right, I guess I will conclude this very rough around the edges review. Also, the Yancey Street gang that gag is introduced here. Anyway, so thank you for watching. I hope you have a good one.